Hey, Josh from Bildr here. In this video, we're going to go over 3 pages to deal with prompts in the new no-code BildrBot ChatGPT clone project. To start, I want to show you what we do when we load our create and manage prompts page, which is ultimately, in this context, where our prompts row page will load into. We use that prompts page in 2 instances, and we need to make sure that our prompts page knows how to behave depending on the page that it's actually on. So on the load of our create and manage prompts page, we set this variable edit prompt to yes. It's the first thing that we do as soon as we load the page, so we know that's done before any other data sets in. The data that does get set into the page is in this repeating list element for prompts right here. That refers to our prompts page, and it creates one prompt for every prompt that fits the description of the filters that we've given it. And the filters that we have given it are go get all of the prompts in the data collection, get all the fields associated with every single prompt, but only get the prompts that are created by the current user that's logged in, use their ID as a filter to only get their prompts. So the other thing that we do on page load inside of our create and manage prompts page is we run this event right after page binding called change event of prompts. And what the change event of prompts does is it takes a look at our repeating list where the prompts are, and it uses our length path. So it says, how long is this repeating list right now? And it produces a number associated with it. If that number is 0, that means we don't have any prompts for this user. And so we have this simple flow that runs where if that is the case, we will go ahead and show this message that says you don't have any prompts yet, add your first one. And then on the alternative, if the prompts is any other value besides 0, it means that there's at least one prompt there. And so we hide that. And so that's something that we do as soon as we load the page, no matter what. We do that check right after page binding. We check the value of the repeating list. We do also run that specific flow at another time, and that's on the change event associated with this repeating list. And so anytime there's a new value added to or taken away from our repeating list, or even if we were to, let's say, change the value of a variable inside of one of the pages in the repeating list, that's going to log as a change event. Something new has changed about it, and it's going to trigger our change event for the repeating list. And so if there's something new about the repeating list, let's say I created my first prompt. Well, it's going to double check to make sure that that is now 0 or not 0, and then do the appropriate action. You could reuse this frequently in advanced filtering scenarios. If you're searching a list of items and you want to have a little message that says, hey, there's no results here, that's a really good way to go about doing it, is just checking on the change event of the repeating list, checking the length of that list to see if there's any results that are there. So that's what's occurring ultimately on our create and manage prompts page. We do also have this add a prompt button that is the button that we can click to create a new prompt. And so what this does is it opens up our new or edit prompts page into the lightbox page that we have on our home page. This is the same component that houses our auth page whenever we sign up for the app in the first place, or if someone returns and needs to log back in. This is showing them when they're not authenticated and they're on the page. Instead of recreating the entire lightbox and message system that already exists, we simply refer back to the one that already exists for us on the home page. And so the first thing that we do is just open the page into the container, although right now this is hidden, and then we run the flow that shows this lightbox. Now, similar to this variable that we set on our create and manage prompts page that we'll reuse and show you in a moment on our row page, we're also doing some custom mapping of values for opening up this newer edit prompts page. And that custom mapping that we're doing is adding a variable for status to new. So this setup is basically going to say, as soon as I load this page, I want to make sure that this variable exists, status new. Because I'm going to check, does the current page have a variable of status that is equal to new? And if so, I know that I'm creating a new prompt. So I'm going to set state create new prompt, which is going to do two things. First, it's going to set the value of the button to add prompt. And then it's going to set the click event of the button to create prompt. Alternatively, when we load the page, and let's say status is not equal to new, it's unknown, we are going to assume and know that we are editing a prompt because it's the only other method that we've allowed this page to be opened by. So we're going to run page binding in that case. Our page binding includes the data run bindings action that exists on all pages by default, and then our set state for edit existing prompt. Edit existing prompt is going to do three things as well. It's going to set the button to edit prompt instead of add prompt. It's going to set the interaction on the button to update the prompt instead of create it. And we're also going to show a hidden div that gives us a button to delete the prompt, and then the confirmations for it to delete or cancel that delete, which is a similar process that we used on our conversation name page when we're loaded up in the app. And so I'll show that in a second. And so that'll only happen and show whenever we're editing an existing prompt instead of just adding a new one. We talked about when we know there is a prompt added to the page, we're going to run page binding. In this case, we've bound three elements to the existing values that come from the current prompt record we're setting into the page. The first is this right here, the name of the prompt. And if we go to the record value, we can see we're pulling from the prompts collection, from the prompt that was added into it. Let's pull the prompt title and set it into this text box right here. Then we do the same for our prompt description. We set it from the prompt description for the current prompt set into the page, the current record. And then we do the same for our select menu for, is this a global prompt or not? An important thing to know about select menus is select menus really have two different things. They have a value and an associated display name for that value. The way that we've set up our global prompt is a Boolean variable, essentially. We're basically looking for a yes, no, a true, false, or a 0 or a 1 is how we typically set this up inside of Bildr. A 0 represents a negative, not true. A 1 represents a yes, or it is true. So the value that actually exists in our Bildr data collection when we go to our prompts. So by default, we have our global field here. If it's checked, that means it's a global prompt, meaning everyone in your entire system is going to see it if they load the application. And we can show that this is actually a value of 1. If we go to field type, we just switch this to single line text. We can see we have a 1 and a 0 as the actual real value. We're just displaying a checkbox for it to make it easy to check or deselect it. So I'm going to switch that back to a checkbox. And back out here. And that's why we're setting a 0 for a no or a 1 for yes, because that's the logic that we're using. When we data bind it, we're data binding that 0 or 1 and displaying an associated no or yes, just so that we have, instead of a checkbox, we have a no or a yes here. We could have a checkbox and it would work the same way. A 0 would actually automatically uncheck it. And if there was a 1 set into it, it would automatically check that checkbox instead. So that's what's happening when we do the data binding when we have set a prompt into it. We data bind those automatically. And then when we click the button, we update that record. So for update prompt, we run this flow, which will automatically update the prompt from the values on the page. So we look at the global select menu. If it's no matter what the value is at the time that we hit update, we pull the values from these text inputs to update this specific prompt. And we're pulling from the ID of the current record value to tie to the ID into the collection to identify exactly what prompt we're updating. If we didn't have this ID field, technically because we have a current record field value on the page, it would know which prompts we intend to update. However, if we didn't have that ID tied to it, and it was on, let's say, a page like this, where there is no specific prompt record assigned to that page, it would actually just end up creating a new record because it wouldn't know what record you're actually asking to update, and it would instead just create a brand new record. In the case of our create prompt, we run the Bildr data collection create record action. And it follows a similar process. We select the prompts collection. We tie the title to the input of the title. We tie the description to that input and the global to the value of the select menu, and then create that record. And then on both create and update, we run our success update pages and hide light boxes, which re-triggers our page load action on create and manage prompts, and also triggers our hide light box function on our home page so that we can hide the message that's appearing on the page at that moment. In addition to running this page load, we actually do also have set up on the create and manage prompts page these data listeners. So we've talked about the data listeners that we have for messages set up on our conversation page and for conversations on our home page. But on our prompts page, we're also listening to our prompts collection and saying if we have any sort of update to these prompts, go ahead and rerun page binding. And so there's actually a little bit of redundancy in us triggering this on success, triggering this page load. We don't really need to do that. So I'm going to delete it and just show you how that will work, because the data listener will take care of the data update for us. So let's go ahead into our manage prompts page. I can see I've got one prompt for the user I'm logged in with. Let's say I want to add a new prompt. We're going to pull up the prompt page. There's no data here. We set global prompt default to no. This is new prompt. Promise it's awesome. Let's add the prompt. And so you can see I added the prompt, which created the record, and then I just closed the lightbox. And because I have my data binding set up along with my data listener to update the page binding flow and rerun the page binding flow, when there's a change to the prompts collection, it automatically goes and gets the new prompt and runs it for us. So if we look at, as this happens live, let's go to inspect element, close that off. And let me do something where on page binding of our create manage prompts page, let's just go ahead and console log this just ran. And so I'll go back to our page here. Let's open up this brand new page. Let's open up our manage prompts. And we'll go to console log and we'll see this just ran. That's our console log to say we just loaded up our page and page binding eventually ran. Now let's go to add another prompt. This is a new prompt. Again, let's show the console log. And let's hit add prompt. So we added prompt. We can see it show up right here. And actually, because there was no other console log between them and it was the same exact thing, instead of showing it again, it shows a 2 right here. But that 2 means it just reran the same value. And again, we didn't trigger that in any flow. It was from the data listener set up to listen to data. Let's talk about our prompts row page, because as you can see, as we load up this page, our prompts row looks different. And we talked earlier about how when we load up our create and manage prompts page, we're setting that variable to edit prompts to yes. So if I go into my prompts row page, and I go to my flows into page load and then to page binding, I can see I have this if then logic check. And what I'm checking is if there is a variable called edit prompt on the parent page, so any page that this happens to show up on, and in this case, it could be conversation page or create and manage prompts. if the variable is equal to yes, I want to set state edit prompt. And what we do when we set the state for edit prompt, I'm showing a little image that is this edit icon right here. And then I'm also setting the interaction on the div, so the whole object itself, to open the edit prompt page. So that set state for edit prompt occurs when that variable is set on its parent, wherever that parent may be. As I build out the application further, I could add additional pages where maybe I have additional states I want that prompt to appear in, or maybe I have additional types of pages where I want them to be able to edit the prompt from it. And I could always have edit prompt variable set on the parent page so that whenever this prompts row page loads up, it could see that and it would be able to behave as I want it to. Now, the other side of the split there is set state, click to start conversation. And so in that case, I'm not having to show any of the images. I'm simply setting the interaction so that when the page loads and I click on this whole prompt, we're going to start the new conversation. And that's what we went through specifically in our conversations page, talking about how to actually work with the AI. The final thing to show is when we actually have the interaction set to open the prompt into the edit page, we run the same thing that we do for add a prompt. We open the newer edit prompt page. We open it to a component on our home page. And we also run the flow to show the lightbox for add prompt on our home page. But the one thing we do differently is we have a specific record. We're sending the current record into the page that we're opening. And so this prompt page has all of the information from our database about that specific prompt. So whichever prompt is showing up, whether it's this one or this one, because we said get all field on our repeating list element, so let's go to the repeating list element right here. Whenever I said this is the collection I want as prompts, and I want you to get all of the fields associated with the prompts, that means when I look at our data collection and prompt, the current record field value is this entire record. Rather, the current record value is this entire record. So when I say send the current record to the next page and open this page with it, this information is being sent to the new page. And remember that all of these variables on this page are accessible both by referring to the current record field value drop down and then choosing that collection and then choosing the specific field, or you can access it by the variable values themselves, created by, modified date. Most frequently, you would probably use the variable ID in a variety of ways. This is typically what you'll do anytime you want to target a specific record. Because this is always guaranteed to be unique, this is where you're really unifying all your records. And then you've got your custom fields of your prompt title, your prompt description, and the global field ID. So what happens when we hit open edit prompt page with current record? We send all of those variables into the page, as well as the designation that this is the current record, which is a Bildr specific thing that allows a lot of things to flow really, really smoothly. It allows page binding to work appropriately. Because we have page binding and we send a current record over, this page knows when I say I want to add a field from prompts to prompt title, the current record has been set by that action, which allows us to bind this page directly to items from that specific record on the page. So that's how our prompt system is designed. The user on our Create Manage Prompts page is able to add their own prompts, manage and edit their own prompts, and even if they chose to, they're able to open up an existing prompt and remove it from the entire system like we just did.